we must be able to look at an EIGRP config and be able to read what's going on inside of it, at least with respect to a few key commands. Let's do that. Firstly, we look at the EIGRP section. So we did a full or a portion of the running config, but we could also do a show running config pipe, which is the vertical line, section EIGRP. We see 110, that's the autonomous system. That has to match. So I would also verify that R2 has the same AS number. The network command. Well, we have two. We're running 172.16.1.1 with an all zeros mask. That enables EIGRP on fast Ethernet 0/0. Looks good. And we do that not to form adjacencies out that interface, but to make sure that we advertise it. We're not running on serial 002. That's going to another autonomous system, so that looks good. That looks good. And lastly, we're turning on EIGRP between R1 and R2 so that we can speak the language of EIGRP, hellos, that will eventually lead to adjacency formation. We didn't put in a wildcard mask, so a classful wildcard mask, a 24-bit wildcard mask, will apply. So if there were other interfaces in 192.168.1, those would be captured by that network statement. But we've turned it on for 001. And if you think there's a mismatch between the subnet mask and the wildcard mask of the network statement, well, that's not a problem. Because remember, we're not trying to match it perfectly. We could, but we're just trying to make sure that we include the right interfaces in our config. And one final thing, the bandwidth. We're highlighting that the bandwidth may need to be changed. Well, the default bandwidth in Cisco router serial interfaces is a little bit troubling. Let's look, and I'll do a show interface serial 1/0. The bandwidth by default on a serial interface is that of a T1, 1.544 megabits per second, or 1544 kilobits per second. If your speed is anything other than that on a serial interface, take heed. Modify the bandwidth parameter to match the effective speed, the effective throughput on that serial interface. You don't have to do this on Ethernet or other media types, but on serial, you absolutely do. So what do you think the bandwidth is for serial 002? Did you guess it? Did you guess it? What do you think it is? Be bandwidth 1544. We don't see that. If we don't see the command in the Cisco operating system that specifies it, we have to assume the default, which is 1544. Okay, so that's interpreting an EIGRP config. Make sure you can read this output.